Hello and welcome to Diverse and Inclusive Leaders. This is the show where I interview the most inspirational and thought-provoking leaders of today and unearth their unique stories of diversity and inclusion to help inspire, educate and motivate others to make the world a better place. Today I am thrilled to be joined by the superb Jim Townsend. Jim is the Chief Procurement Officer of Walgreen Boots Alliance and leads the procurement function. Prior to joining Walgreen Boots Alliance, he worked for Anglo American and General Electric, also within commercial procurement. Now he's worked overseas extensively, now living over in the States. Worked both in the manufacturing and also in the retail environments. Holds an MBA in strategic procurement from the University of Birmingham and a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Hi, Leila. Thanks. And I'm really excited to be here.
Thanks so much for being here. It is just a joy to have you one-on-one, actually, and learning a little bit about how you came to be where you are today, which I understand is based out of Chicago, working for the global giant the vast majority of us around the world know very well, or Boots in the UK, as it is also known.
Yeah, no, I've been with the group for a little over 10 years now. Absolutely fantastic place to work, a really inspirational organization. But before I joined Walgreens Boots Alliance, my career took a number of different pathways. And if I kind of go right back, I left school when I was 16. I disliked school immensely, quite frankly. And I took on an apprenticeship at Rolls-Royce as a craft apprentice. I worked through that, and at the age of I guess in my early 20s, I decided that I actually needed to figure out a career. I got this aspiration to be a professional cyclist and realized that I didn't quite have the talent to be that. And it was probably the most painful profession that anybody could wish for, frankly. So I figured out I needed to get a career when I was in my early 20s. I went back to college, went back to university, and consequently ended up spending 15 years in further education on a part-time basis to do my degree and my master's and what have you. But then I kind of navigated my way around the organization, having various roles in manufacturing, engineering, transformation, program management, and kind of navigating a pathway through to procurement probably sort of 20 years ago. And really took those threads and worked my way through some pretty interesting jobs at Rolls-Royce Aerospace out of the UK before I then went to work for the competition, which is GE Aviation out of Cincinnati in the US, and spent a lot of time working out in Eastern Europe and in Latin America, and a very significant amount of time in China as well. Before I then kind of swapped industries, worked for Anglo American for a period of time before I moved on to Walgreens Boots Alliance, where I headed up the procurement activity across Alliance Boots as we were. And then when we merged with Walgreens to form Walgreens Boots Alliance, I then moved out to the US, where I've been for the past 5 years and truly love what we're doing as a group. Really enjoy living out in Chicago, fantastic place to live. Really warm and friendly people out in the Midwest. A really interesting role that we've got around us because there's just so much happening. There's such a packed agenda, and clearly the market conditions of today and COVID and the changing world that we operate in makes it a truly exciting and frankly an inspirational time to kind of work.
Well, thanks so much, Jim, for that whistle-stop tour. It's fascinating to hear from leaving school at 16 to now being at the helm of one of the most well-known organizations and kind of casually running everything that you do is a pretty astronomical feat. Do you ever kind of look back and think, wow, actually, I've come quite a long way since leaving school at 16 years old, wanting to be a professional cyclist and now ending up driving procurement?
I do. You know what? If I'm completely honest, though, Leila, I was a little bit disappointed that I didn't make it as a professional cyclist. I was an okay amateur, but I really wished I'd have achieved that. But that's probably one of my few disappointments in life. But I've got very, very few disappointments. But that would be one of them for sure. But yeah, you know what? I guess each and every one of us, when we reflect back on when we finished our sort of education and we went into a professional world, be it corporate, be it not for profit, or a government entity, or a smaller business as well. You know, each and every one of us has a view about where the future might take us. And all those years ago, I had no view about what it was like. The world was a very different place in the 1980s. Views and perceptions about the world were very different. It was a very much, well, I guess I'm not sure whether it was smaller or bigger, but it was very, very much less diverse in terms of global trade, in terms of people's views and perceptions. You know, clearly the UK was going through some pretty significant economic and political turmoil at that point in time. But I kind of look back, and I'm perhaps one of those individuals that maybe overthinks things sometimes. And, you know, even back in the sort of mid 1990s, I got a clear view about the kind of things I wanted to do and the kind of experiences I wanted to have. I was never as formulaic in terms of saying I need to have positions at these different levels and what have you. It was more about the experiences for me. I wanted to work globally. I wanted to have the opportunity to develop strategies and see them deployed. I wanted to have the opportunity to really make a positive impact. You know, I've been super fortunate in that way. I really have. And when I hang up my boots, as to say, at the end of it all, I'll look back and say, wow, what a fantastic journey and how fortunate I've been.
And you've been fortunate both professionally and also personally as well, Jim. I know that you say quite candidly you're married to Moya and you have a number of crazy children as well, who I'm sure have had the experience of lots of different countries, cultures, and all of the offerings that being a global citizen has to bring. And I wonder, has that been, I suppose, a significant factor on how you have grown the family throughout the years as well? Because I know you're very passionate about diverse cultures and environments and almost this rich learning journey, as it were.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. And it, quite frankly, it brings a tear to my eye now you've kind of asked that question. It really has. And I think if I look at our four children, two of the two eldest ones are back at university in the UK. And I think that they are pretty savvy individuals, quite frankly. And in terms of being worldly wise, they understand, as a result of living abroad, and have a range of different perspectives that, quite frankly, they wouldn't have had if they'd have just stopped in living in the UK. So, you know, they are very broad-minded. They're very conscious of different cultures and different ways of things get done in different societies and what the different norms are, and I'm very, very attentive to those issues, shall I say. So that's fantastic. And I think my younger two children are over here in Chicago with us now. I reflect on my youngest daughter, who Moya, my wife, picks up from school every day. And as she walks out of school, she walks out talking to my wife, Moya, with an American accent. And by the time they've made the 5-minute walk home, she's back speaking with an English accent. So kids adapt very quickly. They know what kind of norms and routines where they need to, when there's the right time to fit in and when's not the right time to fit in, which I think is great. So I think really interesting to hear your children talk about US politics. So my two kids come home and talk to me about US politics and tell me all about US politics. Interesting, when we were living in the UK, they weren't in the slightest bit interested. But the fact that they've got views on Donald Trump, the fact that they've got views on Joe Biden, the fact they've got views about the fairness or whatever your viewpoint be on the Electoral College, you know, is really kind of quite interesting. And they've been super fortunate in terms of that. So yes, it's made a huge impact on them. But what I would say to anybody that's thinking about working abroad is it will leave an indelible mark on your family as a whole, and accept the fact that your children will become, and forgive me if it sounds a little bit trite, but your children will become citizens of the world and will have very different perspectives. and viewpoints about what's right and what's wrong as a result of those experiences.
Well, Jim, thanks so much for sharing that. I think it's incredibly heartwarming, firstly, to hear about the family as well as the work side of things. When you use the word indelible family mark, it does really resonate. My parents went to work out in Hong Kong for many, many years, back when Hong Kong was a British colony, and they attest that to some of the richest learnings that they have had. But it's fascinating to hear you talk about the kids and also this intergenerational difference. You know, the fact that back in the day, in inverted commas, we were not to talk about religion or politics necessarily, because that was a recipe for disaster. Now there is this encouragement of freedom of speech, and I think it is a great thing that children, youngsters are really getting more involved than they ever have been before, in particular when there are such positive yet also challenging world issues at stake. But the fact that our younger generations want to get so involved in making a positive difference really does bring a huge smile to my face. And I guess moving on, Jim, into kind of the day job, as it were, the procurement world, and the fact that actually procurement can really touch many, many people's lives for the better. What is it that kind of really excites you about supplier diversity? And for those of us who perhaps don't know really what supplier diversity is, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and something we feel pretty passionate about within Walgreens Boots Alliance. You know, I'd kind of answer the question like this, in as much that we have a view, and I have a view, which says that a company, the organization, and its supply chain should, in essence, reflect the customers and the patients of that company that we serve. And I think the same is absolutely true for a supply chain. So, you know, my view is that procurement is a force for good and should absolutely be a force for good. And yes, we have to kind of do all the commercial stuff, but that's kind of part of the role. But in actual fact, structuring a supply chain which provides an opportunity to support for example, some of the most underserved communities, and ensure that more cash is directed towards those communities in a way which then enables those communities to grow and prosper in a direction they perhaps might otherwise have struggled to without that support. I think that's kind of really important. But I think also supply diversity, what it does bring is really drives new sources of innovation and value that kind of take us in new directions, which are filled with new opportunities that, quite frankly, without that diverse supply chain, we wouldn't have been able to access. I think the other thing I would add, Leila, is I think that increasingly our customers and our employees are demanding it of us. What they're looking for is a supply chain which is exciting, that brings that new innovation, that really brings the model which reflects our kind of customers and who we are and the values that we have. And I think most importantly, you have to believe this is simply the right thing to do. You know, as an organization, you have to look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day, and as individuals and leaders, and kind of ask yourself, every day, am I doing the right thing for our customers, employees, and owners? And I think this is a key part of that, frankly.
It is so well said and so well articulated, and it also seems something that is so also obvious to organizations that are not yet really considering the value, of course, of corporate social responsibility, but also the impact, the true impact on the day-to-day lives of communities when it comes to really curating a supply chain and communities of organizations, businesses that really do care and represent the community, as you say, and which is served. And I wonder, what about the measures of success, would you say, for supplier diversity? Because as you alluded to, we're seeing a kind of a really momentous shift now from what was perhaps previously purely CSR initiatives through to now supply chain diversity initiatives, and kind of almost a slight blurring of the lines between the two. What do you think the measures of success will look like, and any further advice for those considering implementing this seriously into their organizations?
Yeah, it's a great question. In terms of measures of success, I think, sure, there's lots of numeric measurements out there. There's companies talk about how much spend they have with diverse suppliers, and I think that's an important part of it, but I think that's only one component. I think the measures of success that we would have are somewhat broader than that. And I think we look at a number of different dimensions. One of those dimensions would be suppliers with diverse teams. So, quite often, and in many spaces, and I think I perhaps shared this example with you in the past, Leila, we look for suppliers where they represent the diversity of our customer base and our team members as well. So a great example was, we recently went through a process where we were selecting a long-term partner as our key marketing agency, providing a whole load of support around creative media, public relations and what have you. Really key partnership to us, really strategic to us. And we were going through the selection process on that. One company turned up and there was a complete lack of diversity within that team. And we kind of put it to them, which said, how can you possibly represent Walgreens Boots Alliance, our customers and our patients and our team members, when you have zero diversity within the team? How can you possibly understand what it feels like to be one of our customers without that? And I have no hesitation in saying that that company didn't progress beyond that. And we actually ended up selecting a partner who'd actually got a really strong diversity within the team that they were supporting the account with. So that's an example of, it's not specifically a measure, but it's kind of part of the outlook that we have. One of the other things we're doing that we measure is really driving growth within the diverse supply base. So actually having almost a capability building and a capacity building program where we work with circa 40 different companies to kind of grow their capabilities and grow their ability to work with large companies, such that we've got more diverse suppliers that we can work with in the future. Because it can be quite intimidating if you're a relatively small organization working with a large organization, bid in the UK, bid in the US. It's an acquired skill, shall I say. One of the things we do is help those organizations navigate working with large organizations and help them understand how to be successful. That's really key. I think that's a really great investment that we make. As I say, we've absolutely got the metrics up there. We've absolutely got the analytics up there in terms of that. But I think it's much more than just measuring. It's about how you embrace it. It's about how you bring diverse suppliers in to really help shape the direction of the organization, really kind of push the organization forward in some new ways, rather than just about having diverse spend in certain categories, which quite frankly may be easy to access. I think there's a spectrum here almost for diverse suppliers where, yes, there are certain activities which are important to bring revenue into certain communities. But at the other end of the spectrum, there's also suppliers which are absolutely driving the thinking and shaping the direction of major corporates such as ours. So I view it in many ways. Maybe I've missed the question, but hopefully that gives you a bit of insight.
No, you absolutely have not. I think what's fascinating about what you're saying is this is not just metrics. This is not just analytics. When we say even sometimes quite corporate words like that. I think it frames things in such a way where they aren't quite as human as what you're trying to articulate. Ultimately, when it comes to diverse spend in certain categories and all of that kind of stuff, that is wonderful. But actually, what is really touching about this is the fact that it is the true impact within those communities. It is the true direction, the empathy, the emotion, the things that you see in real life, the vaccines that are happening, the change on the actual grassroots level that you are seeing through the impact of these initiatives ultimately at grassroots level. And I think that is something, as you say, that really does impact growth and capability across the board. When you talked before about the selection process example and perhaps the lack of diversity, it was interesting because I think it's becoming harder and harder these days to not be honest and transparent, because do you represent the communities in which you serve? Are we missing a trick by not including those individuals? How does it feel to actually include those partners, like the examples that you gave, who've got a really strong, innovative, diverse mindset and the experience as well that can make that true impact? And things like this have a huge ripple effect as well within communities. Word gets around very quickly, and I think in this kind of peculiar kind of world of COVID and lockdown and everything like that we are all experiencing, you start to notice the real little things. You start to notice the way people are treated, what might be happening on social media. The small things become big things, and actually it's having that real human touch that makes the profound difference.
As you were talking there, Leila, you make me think of something, and I kind of reflect on this. I was reflecting, and our procurement team is actually very diverse, really brilliant mix of males and females, people of colour, people from different backgrounds. It works incredibly well. But we re-energized this program last year in particular, and quite frankly, spot by the DEI revolution that kind of kicked off last springtime. And what we found was there was a huge passion within the team to do something different in this space. And we found that if we got our people kind of motivated behind the subject, that they just go take it on themselves. They created a whole load of ambassadors to really drive the program. And they got so excited about it. It really is just become self-fulfilling. And we've made sure that we've changed our processes, changed our operating model to make sure that this is a key part of what we do every day. But people just do it because they know it's the right thing to do now. And, it's not that we weren't doing it before, but I think we're doing it with a whole different level of vigor and excitement. And the criticality of it is much more, how should I say, it's much more personal to people now. One of the questions I've heard in the past is, what happens when you have a situation where you have supplier A and supplier B, and they're both the same, and one's diverse and one's not? Is it right to select one over the other? And quite frankly, this is a complete non-issue, because it's never like that. These decisions are never that polarized, shall I say. And what I just encourage everybody to think about is, you've got to reflect on what's important to you as an organization. You've got to make rounded decisions based on what works for you in terms of the performance outcomes and the financial outcomes that you're seeking, in terms of the diversity outcomes that you're seeking, in terms of the risk profile, the wider CSR profile as well. You've got to make those decisions on a rounded basis. It's never about diversity or not. And diversity is just an integral part of that decision. I'd just like to kind of slay the myth around what happens if you have this scenario. It's not like that. Just move on from that, I would say.
It's fascinating. I like the way that you say it's never diversity or not. It is making these conscious decisions to do what is right. And I think that's another reason why I think what you've done in the procurement function strategically, as well as what Walgreen Boots Alliance are doing on this incredible global level, has been so successful. Because when you pin your colours to the mast, and obviously we've seen the additional pillar of inclusion up there, not just lip service anymore. It is doing, saying, pinning colours to the mast, and then making sure that translates right across the organisation through to the depths of where those valuable pounds or dollars are actually spent. And it does make difference to people's lives. And it comes...
Yeah, no, exactly. It really does. I think it'd be wrong for me not to mention this. So we have hired Ros Brewer, who is our new chief executive, who started, I think it was last week that Ros started. And I joined Ros on a call with the rest of the senior leadership team within a couple of hours of her kind of joining us. And, it's pretty clear in terms of what's important to Ros. But Ros is I think I'm right in saying this, the only African-American chief exec on the Fortune 500. We hired Ros, not because she was a diverse candidate, because she's a brilliant female leader. And the fact that she comes from an African-American background as well is an added bonus. And wow, she's going to bring some different perspectives. So I think hugely powerful. But what a brilliant thing for everybody in the organization to see. First female chief exec, first African-American chief exec we've had as well. It'll give a whole load of people a whole load of inspiration.
Actually made my skin tingle a little bit then as you were speaking, because it is just so what our Fortune, our FTSE, our large organizations need. And it's what the world needs. Organizations and people who have true leadership capability, humanity, and also an inordinate amount of skill as well. It is truly inspirational. But you as well, Jim, are incredibly inspirational for your humanity, your openness, your candidness. This is my stereotypes and my biases here. I used to think procurement, those procurement people are so tough. But actually, there is humanity in procurement. I think, it's just beautiful hearing how you feel about what you do and about those communities. And then you see it right up the way to the boardroom with Ros Brewer, who I don't know personally, but we are hoping to have speak at our DAR Global Summit later this year. She is a true inspiration to so many. And that is not just Black women, but to many, many others. It's visible and it's also invisible diversity at the same time. But you are right, it is an added bonus on top of someone who is a very, very astute American businesswoman. So I guess on that note, I always try and do a great summary at the end of these podcast sessions. But Jim, I'm thinking to myself, where am I going to start now to do a summary? What I will say for those who are tuning in is I am sure, I'm going to be very firm about this, I'm sure that you have learned a lot about the benefits of supply chain diversity. Some of the things that really stood out to me were the humanity, the bridge between personal and professional. Those two do tend to draw ever closer together these days, in particular in the world in which we are working. Generational diversity, race, religion, ethnic diversity, and mindset diversity, all of these rich idiosyncratic details are incredibly important to make successful teams thrive, but also to have that real innovative mindset when it comes to translating this into business strategy at the same time. I love, Jim, how you talked about innovation, the customer demand as well when it comes to supply chain diversity, and also the passion that people from different communities and different backgrounds can bring. This is not just about metrics and analytics and box tickings. This is about embracing our communities and really leaving a legacy for our future generations of leaders as well, and global citizens, to use Jim's terminology right from the beginning of this podcast. So Jim, thank you so much for joining today. I know you're going on well-deserved time off. So thank you very much for being here. It's been a real joy having you on the show.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So much appreciate you asking me to come and speak and join you, Leila. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks so much, Jim. My name's Leila Mackenzie-Dellis. I'm the founder and CEO of Dial Global. You have been listening to the superb Jim Townsend from Walgreen Boots Alliance. You can check out the show notes. If you missed anything at all, we're putting all of the key points into those at the end of the show. You can check out the podcast, Diverse and Inclusive Leaders, on Apple, on Spotify, on your favorite podcast. Or you can visit us at www.dialglobal.org/podcast. Take care, and we'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you so much for watching the Diverse and Inclusive Leaders podcast. Please do feel free to hit the like button below, or if you'd like to receive future notifications, do ping the notification bell here at the side. If you're interested in the audio version only, you can find it on the following streaming platforms. Any extra info and descriptions will be in the links below. Look forward to seeing you soon.